All right, let's get into it. Today, we're talking about SoFi. You know, that fintech company that's probably all over your social media. It all started with student loans, but now they're gunning to take over your entire financial life. So let's dive in and really figure out what's going on under the hood.
So when you hear SoFi, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of people, it's just this slick app for saving cash, or maybe for refinancing a student loan. And look, you're not wrong, but that is just the very, very tip of the iceberg. What's really going on here is so much bigger.
Yeah, see, SoFi's ambition is, well, it's massive. They don't just want to be an app on your phone. Nope. They are trying to be the only financial app you ever need. It's this whole financial super app strategy, and honestly, it is the absolute key to understanding every single move they make.
Okay, so how exactly are they trying to pull this off? Let's peel back the layers a bit on their business model. It's definitely more complex than you might think at first, but we're going to break it all down.
Really, the best way to think about SoFi is like a machine with three different but totally connected engines. Each one has its own specific job to do, and when they all work together, well, that's when they create this really powerful flywheel. Let's take a look at each one. Okay, first up, you've got the engine that started it all, lending. This is their bread and butter. It kicked off with student loan refinancing, and from there it's grown to personal loans, home loans, you name it. And what's really, really important to get here is that even with all their flashy new products, this traditional lending business is still their biggest moneymaker. It is the economic heart of the company. All right, engine number two is financial services. Now, this is the side of SoFi you probably see and interact with the most. We're talking SoFi Money for checking and savings, SoFi Invest for stocks and crypto, their credit cards, insurance, all that stuff. But here's the twist. The goal here isn't necessarily to make a ton of profit on these services directly. No, their real job is to get you into the SoFi ecosystem, keep you there, and then, and this is the important part, cross-sell you on those high-profit loans from Engine 1. And then there's the third engine. This is the one most people have never even heard of, their technology platform. This is SoFi's big business-to-business or B2B play. See, they bought these companies, Galileo and Technisys, and now they provide the back-end infrastructure. Think of it like the digital plumbing that actually powers a whole bunch of other fintech companies. It's pretty wild, right? You could be using a competitor's app, and SoFi's tech is quietly running the show in the background. It's a massive, massive bet on where the whole banking industry is headed. So, when you put all three of those engines together, the lending, the consumer apps, and the back-end tech, what do you get? You get what's called a vertically integrated ecosystem. It's a fancy way of saying they control the whole process. They own the technology, they build their customer-facing products on top of that tech, and then they use those products to feed their main profit engine. The whole setup is designed to be super efficient, lower their costs, and, well, keep customers right inside their walled garden. But here's the crazy part. Owning all of that, that's not even their biggest advantage, not by a long shot. In 2022, SoFi made a single move that fundamentally separated it from almost every other fintech competitor out there. It's what makes this company such a fascinating story. Seriously, this one move in early 2022 was an absolute game changer. It completely transformed their business model from the ground up and gave them this huge structural advantage that almost none of their rivals have. And here it is. SoFi became an actual nationally chartered bank. This is so, so important to understand. They're not just a tech company with a bank partner anymore. They are the bank. This right here is the secret weapon that supercharges their entire system. So why does being a bank matter that much? Well, it all comes down to the cost of money. The whole process is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. First, they can gather really low-cost deposits from members. That's all the money sitting in your SoFi checking and savings accounts. Then second, they can use that cheap pool of money to fund their own loans, instead of having to borrow expensive capital from somebody else. And what does that do? It leads directly to step 3. It dramatically increases their net interest margin, which is just a fancy way of saying how much profit they make on loans. It's the fundamental business of banking, just supercharged by technology. So with this whole structure now in place, you can see that SoFi is playing a very, very high-stakes game. I mean, the potential for them to be a massive success is definitely there. But at the same time, there are some pretty significant risks that could completely derail the whole project. And that brings us to the two sides of the SoFi coin, right? The promise versus the peril. The promise is pretty clear. If they can successfully scale up that tech platform, and if they really master cross-selling between all their different products, you're looking at massive growth potential, especially if we see interest rates fall. But the peril is just as real.
This is a business that's super sensitive to interest rates. It faces intense competition. And let's not forget the credit risk. What happens when people can't pay back their loans? Plus, now that they're a bank, they are under a ton of strict regulatory oversight.
And that competition is no joke. Just look at this. They're fighting what is basically a brutal three-front war. In digital banking, you've got them up against specialists like Chime and Ally. In lending, they're taking on heavyweights like Rocket and Upstart. And in that tech infrastructure space, they're competing with entrenched players like Fiserv and Marqeta. Winning in even one of these areas is incredibly difficult. SoFi is trying to win in all of them at once.
So, after looking at all these pieces, the three engines, the game-changing bank charter, the opportunities, the risks, what's the one big idea you should walk away with? If there is one thing to take away from all this, it's this quote right here. SoFi is attempting to build a fully integrated financial ecosystem. It's not just about banking or just about lending or just about investing. It's about blending all of those things plus their enterprise technology into one single massive operation. Which, of course, leaves us with the million-dollar or maybe billion-dollar question. Is SoFi actually building the future of finance right before our eyes? Or is this whole thing a complicated house of cards, just waiting for a tough economy to knock it all down? That's the real question, and the answer is going to define SoFi's next chapter.